Hello everyone, welcome back. The Star Beats Today video must watching for information. Gene Hackman, and subscribe the channel for more video killings of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, whose remains were discovered in their Santa Fe home, are shrouded in suspicion. Hollywood has always been home to legends, but few actors have had as profound an impact as Gene Hackman. Even in his last years, his story shocked the industry by leaving behind mysteries, questions, and a terrifying revelation from his closest friend. Join us as we talk about what Gene Hackman's satisfying friend, Dustin HoffMan, assumed when he said, "He is not who you believe you studied, he is Dustin HoffMan and Gene Hackman together," even though most people could never imagine this kind of factor. Hollywood is a merciless location, and true friendships are rare. Fame, opposition, and the relentless pursuit of achievement often spoil even the most powerful bonds, but some friendships are built differently. A few are formed in second of war in tiny bloodless residences, with slightly enough money for food on rooftops where goals are spoken into the night, and in long conversations packed with laughter, doubt, and survival. One such friendship was among Dustin HoffMan and Gene Hackman, two absolutely specific actors who began their adventure together and, regardless of the whole thing, remained related by means of the past they shared. Their story began in 1956 at Pasadena Playhouse, a famous performing school in California. Dustin HoffMan turned into a younger man who had tried remedy and song, however had by no means felt virtually obsessed on something till he walked into his first acting elegance for the first time in his existence. He may want to attention completely on something, and that realization changed the whole lot. He turned into now not specifically tall, nor did he match the conventional Hollywood picture. Later in his profession, he often joked that he appeared like a rat on screen. However, he had something that set him apart, a severe power and a simple talent. When Gene Hackman first saw Dustin, he instantly changed into a very unique kind of guy. He was 27 years old, had already served in the Marines, and had a challenging demeanor. Unlike Dustin, he didn't second-guess his career choice. He knew he wanted to be an actor despite the fact that few people believed in him. He was older than most of the other college students, and had a critical, determined attitude. Dustin was standing in the center of the room, wearing a corduroy vest without a blouse. Their time at Pasadena Playhouse was brief, primarily because of Gene's strict grading system that ranked students in categories like movement, voice projection, gestures, interpretation, and mindset. Gene later stated that he immediately thought Dustin had changed into a strange little guy, but there was something about him that intrigued him regardless of their differences. Gene did not live up to these expectations, and after only 3 months he was expelled. Instead of giving up, he packed his bags and moved to New York to pursue appearing on his own. 2 years later, Dustin saw him. When he got there, he had only $50 in his pocket and had no idea what to do. The city crushed him with its length and noise, and pace lost and suffered. He sought out Gene, who let him sleep on the floor of his tiny kitchen. It was only meant to be a few nights, but it ended up taking 3 weeks. Eventually, Gene and his wife Faye realized they couldn't continue to host him indefinitely, so they decided it was time to push him towards independence. Dustin moved in with another struggling actor, Robert Duvall, after Gene took him out to look for a place to live. The two of them ended up in a 3-bedroom, 6th-floor walk-up condo on 109th Street and Broadway, which served as more of a hostel for aspiring actors and opera singers who had been looking to live to tell the story of New York struggles, survival, and brotherhood. The rental was anything but clean, and none of them had regular jobs. Instead, they took on any task they could find to make ends meet. Dustin, Robert, and Gene were employed by the Yellow Pages as typists. Furniture, worked in pharmacies, and even worked as a doorman. At one point, Gene was given a job carrying priceless paintings, but his negligence nearly led to a catastrophe when he accidentally pierced a Picasso lithograph with a broomstick. Despite the day-to-day struggles, there has been an indisputable joy in the years. On many nights, they climbed onto the building's rooftop and played drums with Dustin at the bongos and Gene on the congas. They idolized Marlon Brando and talked about his pee. Dustin later recalled that they had been excited about meeting girls and that performing schools were full of models. Occasionally, a woman would approach and suggest that they practice a romantic scene, and he and his friends would gladly comply. However, the most bizarre stories frequently came from Robert. Dustin, who would tell stories about how, after a successful night out, he would wake up the next morning and take a shower with her best friend, only for Robert to suddenly walk in complete. Ironically, Dustin's big break in The Graduate coincided with Gene landing a part in Bonnie and Clyde. The days of sleeping on the floor and begging money for food are past, since fame brings with it unavoidable changes. Gene had been a strong Mr. Robinson in The Graduate at first, but the director became dissatisfied with his performance and replaced him suddenly. In 2003, almost 50 years after they first met Dustin, Gene confessed something that many actors secretly worry about. Every time he finished a movie, he questioned if he could ever get hired again. Dustin understood the feeling all too well. What remains unshaken is the bond they built in one's early years. No matter how much time passes, the memories of suffering collectively, playing track on rooftops, sleeping on kitchen flooring, and sharing the same dream will usually remain the same. Their friendship did not cease, but it changed. They were no longer three unknown actors going through hardships to become stars with distinct lives, busy schedules, and separate paths that prevented them from seeing each other. Hollywood had lost one of its greatest legends, and just when everyone thought that after they retired, those friends, especially Dustin and Gene, might experience more than ever before, the internet was overflowing with breathtaking knowledge. The man whose voice and presence had created many of the most memorable moments in film, Gene Hackman, was found dead in his Santa Fe home. But the tragedy didn't end there. His wife, Betsy Arawakawa, was also found dead, and even more tragically, one of their beloved dogs had also passed away. It was assumed to be just another peaceful morning in the vast landscapes of New Mexico, where Gene had spent his later years away from the bright lights of Hollywood. A renovation worker showed up at his possessions for a routine inspection, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. The house was always serene as it stood there in the warm desert sun. But something felt different. No sound, no movement, no reaction from pounding on the door. The worker paused, then banged louder this time, but nothing happened. He contacted security, and a defend quickly came to help. Together, they inspected the house. Through the windows, everything appeared every day until the protect stopped, his eyes widening in horror, and he saw immobile figures lying on the floor. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking, and dialed 911. A moment later, sirens pierced the silence, and deputies from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office arrived. Their flashing lighting fixtures gave the quiet belongings an eerie glow, and what they found inside deepened the thriller the most. The body changed into the bathroom near a south foul play close by. One and all their puppies lay curled up lifeless, as if it had clearly drifted off to sleep. However, surprisingly, two other puppies have been nonetheless alive, one pacing nervously, the other standing guard over Betsy's still shape. Then they determined Gene. He was in a room fed with shoes, a cane, and two glasses rested beside him, as although he had dropped them simply earlier than collapsing the room become undisturbed. Nothing changed into out of region. It was as if time had truly stopped for him, simply as it had for Betsy and their dog. No blood, no overturned furniture, no damaged glass, no signal of compelled entry. It changed into an eerie scene, one which left investigators looking for answers. Unsettling. Find out discoveries in Gone Hackman's home. In case you're interested by how Dustin reacted to the dying of his pleasant buddy, live with us a little longer due to the fact before that we will point out some other odd findings through the police that handiest complex. The case nobody, especially Dustin HoffMan, could have predicted such a tragic and mysterious ending to the first film. Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arawakawa had lived a quiet and private life in Santa Fe, far from Hollywood and the constant media attention. People who knew them described their days as nonviolent, full of simple, ordinary manners and a love for solitude. There had been no signs of trouble, no reason to believe whatever was wrong, and their sudden and unexplained deaths bowled over not only their friends but the entire film industry. The symptoms matched, or even one of their dogs had died, which strengthened the idea that the cause was carbon monoxide poisoning. It seemed like the most plausible explanation, an invisible and lethal fuel oozing into the house and silently killing them. Gasoline business specialists and fire department officials raced to the site, searching every area of the house for signs of the poison. However, their testing found nothing. No leak, no broken heater, nothing in the air that might have been the silent murderer. The concept fell apart, leaving detectives desperate for answers. They searched for every other reason and discovered something as annoying. A vast array of prescription drugs were found in the house. Some were neatly arranged on shelves, while others were strewn all over countertops. Some bottles were even left open, and among them were tablets for thyroid issues, blood pressure, and general pain relief. Investigators meticulously recorded each bottle, noting that some had hardly been touched. Others have been partially depleted, which has led to additional inquiries about whether it was an accidental overdose, a lethal combination of medications, or something else entirely. Then came the invention that completely altered everything. For the examination, Gene Hackman's pacemaker, a device that not only controlled his heartbeat but also recorded vital information, was taken out. The remaining recorded heartbeat of Gene Hackman was discovered on February 17th, 9 days before his body was discovered. Revelation changed the entire timeline, leading experts to question whether Gene had been dead for more than a week, while the house remained undisturbed. What was even more difficult was the question of whether Betsy had died at the same time or if she had been living alone in that house for days, slowly fading away without anyone to help Dustin HoffMan with his best friend. Until all of the tests are completed, it will be some time before we know the answers to most of those questions, but even as investigators look for the truth, Hollywood is still dealing with the loss. Despite the flood of tributes from all across the world, one voice stood out. Outside among the rest, Dustin HoffMan, Hackman's best friend of more than 60 years, finally broke his silence. And when he did, he shocked everyone. "It's time to tell everyone," he said in an emotional voice, that he is no longer the person you saw. Perhaps he lived a quiet and reclusive life and kept secrets and techniques, but Gene Hackman transformed into someone far more than any of us. I know Dustin spoke no longer simply of Gene's greatness as an actor but of the ardor that made him unforgettable. He defined him as a person of stressed power, a person who never did anything midway, whether he changed into perfecting a role, discussing history, or obsessing over an ebook. He had just read. Gene threw himself into the whole lot with the identical intensity. He became curious about the smallest info, capable of recall difficult to understand records, approximately architecture struggle, method, or vintage Hollywood scandals past the display. He had a pointy, frequently biting humorousness, the type that would catch humans off shield. He loved the fun of competition, whether it become a game of chess, a round of poker, or even in a simple wager on how lengthy a director might take to installation a shot. He had a deep love for traditional vehicles, restoring them with the equal precision he added to his performances that changed into who he become, in no way just an actor but a man who lived life with a quiet, however plain hearth. If you could ask Dustin HoffMan one thing about Gone Hackman, what would it be that would help us identify the feedback and get more people to subscribe to our channel?